predictability question in asking, is there space to do it once in 2 years or once in 3 years and so on? Because I think in this predictability, we need to drill deeper. What is to me, the fact that we do it every year is actually the cause of the unpredictability. And so what it means is that if this particular tax is going to be this rate, can it stay there for a determined period of time? So it's my view that that's the direction we need to go. But now this question about, are we getting sufficient taxes? Are we prioritizing the use of taxes? Now, are we getting sufficient taxes? Again, which lens do you want to use? If you use, like what our friends in IMF say, tax to GDP ratio, then you'll say there is room for improvement. But you also have to always remember the composition of the GDP itself. The reality is that our GDP has grown primarily because of increases in the public sector contribution to GDP. In simple English, because we have built railways, we have built roads and so on. But roads of themselves don't pay taxes. Road is an enabler of private sector activity, and that private sector activity is the one that generates taxes. So we have to complete that chain. For example, at the moment, one of the urgent businesses of government is how to reignite growth, and that we think some of the growth will come from increases in credit to private sector. Are we prioritizing well? I think both the chair of finance and I have been on television saying, well, we should also talk about the expenditure side. In fact, we should pay more attention to the expenditure side. That even the revenue targets, both for national government and county government, must not be driven by the expenditure decision that, okay, we need to spend this, therefore we need to raise this. We should ask the question, why do we need to spend this amount? And I think that is a fair and correct thing to do. Finally, you see, if we don't question public expenditure, not just public, even in companies, expenditure is sticky downwards. Once we establish something is being done, it's not usual for people to say, let's stop doing it, unless there's an actual process that tries to contain it, and where legacy programs have gone through their usefulness, and we remove them. So, Mr. Muragori is right. Prioritization. Prioritization means a conversation on the other side of this equation, which is the expenditure side, and why are we spending on this particular program, what's the benefit of it, and so on. And I think the way we must improve is having that detailed conversation.
Okay, interesting. And Chairman Kuria, maybe a follow-up to that, particularly because we've been very vocal on the need to focus on expenditure. How do you see it in Parliament, and you also contributed passing some of those things? When you're raising those taxes, the Finance and Planning Committee, is there a conversation you do have? And then, secondly, if you were to say that you're not to be reviewing some of these laws every other year, would you still have work?
Maybe speaking from the position I hold as the chair of the Finance and National Planning Committee, our role is primarily division oversighting our business departments around Treasury, CPK, and all the other institutions around National Treasury. It's primarily to raise revenue. Perhaps that's why most of my conversations or most of my public interactions have been on the revenue side. But every time we've had a discussion, I have said, see, let's even go back to where we were last year. We're saying reject, don't even amend, reject, we don't want the finance bill. I said it's fine. But you know that there are 3 laws that are passed at the same time. When you have a discussion about the finance bill, at the exact same time, we have an appropriations bill. At the exact same time, we have the division of revenue bill. So the division of revenue bill is sharing revenue between national governments and county governments. You hardly hear a lot of heat about it. In fact, in the case the community is about increasing the allocation that going to counties. The appropriations bill, there isn't a lot of conversation about it, about what is going to. The conversation is always based on the finance bill. And I think, as Kenyans, this is why we lose focus. Because if we concentrated in as much as we are concerned about the taxes as we would be on our expenditure, we will put the executive to account and make sure that money is appropriated where it most fits. Because every expenditure in this country, for KRA to spend any coin, for any other state agency to spend any coin, it has to be approved by the National Assembly. And it's approved by line by line. Unfortunately now, with the passing of the law, it happens usually in the evenings. And so the order paper reads, Honorable Chair, I beg to move that vote X be approved as per the order paper. Of those people say aye, the ayes have it. But there is no proper scope of what that money goes to. Most importantly, we have a considerable amount of money, around, I think it's around almost 400 billion shillings now, that goes to counties. But who oversees the expenditure of these counties? The Senate is concerned by the overall spending in the counties. But the real expenditures goes to, the real oversight of the expenditures in the counties go to county assemblies. But how much attention do we give to these expenditures in the counties? And especially, how much role do we play on the county assemblies in our county governments? And once we are able to have this conversation about, we are sending 400 billion shillings to counties. We are sending X to county A, B, C, D, 47 of that, 47 of the counties. What is the money going to do? Because that is your tax. So the expenditures made by Mombasa County or Wajir County, even when you live in Nairobi County, is important to you. Because it is your taxes. And once we now are able as a country, and I really like the way now we have come to democratic public engagement maturity, where we are now putting all of us as leaders to account on everything that we make. If we will focus that now on every coin that goes to the counties, and it makes it become your business what the county government of Siaya is doing, because what the county government of Siaya is spending is your taxes, is your money. It's not the money for Siaya. It is your money.
So, Chairman, I hear you, but you're saying that at Parliament, it's just what by acclamation and things move. But members of Parliament are elected to do exactly what you're spending here, with or without Kenyans participating. And that then leads us to a question about the public participation, which courts have faulted continuously, despite the Supreme Court overturning a decision on the Finance Act of 2023. How do you walk that journey for members of Parliament also to do their job?
I have to be very careful what I say. There is a law that is played on what's called the department. Because what even the budget and appropriations committee does is an aggregation of what the departmental committees do. But the way now we need to put ourselves to account, and I say ourselves because I am now on the other side, is do we follow the discussion that happens in, say, the Departmental Committee on Labor? Does any of you follow the discussion about the Departmental Committee on Health? Do we have discussions, some in your panel conversations, that you have very heated debates on TV. Do you follow what happens in the Department of Transport? I said in the Departmental Committee on Transport, Departmental Committee on Devolution, Departmental Committee on, all these departmental committees. And that's what I'm saying. The responsibility to all of us, including us as members of parliament and you as citizens, supposed to fully looking at National Assembly, not just as National Assembly, but understanding the role of each of the departmental committees and the role they play. I would like to really emphasize, say for example, labor. But you see, my exposure to what happens to the state departments around labor is only informed by the report that the departmental committee will share at the floor. So my contribution to that particular debate, and those reports will be 200 pages, 300 pages long, will be based on what comes at the floor at that particular time. But if we are all able to have an engagement on this particular discussion, and also, and I usually take this time because I was a great critic when I was on these other sides. And now that I'm on the other side, that's why I really take time to make members of the public understand. But the discussion that you find at the floor are informed by a report of a committee. And that's why I took over as chair of the Finance Committee. I made it upon myself to make sure that all the deliberations about our department was public information. And that's why I think for the last 2 years we've had one person was telling me the other time, in fact it was my grandmother was asking me where the finance bill came from and why I had to initiate the finance bill. And I'm like, sure, this finance bill has been there time immemorial since the starting of the new constitution. But yes, I took upon myself to inform the members of the public what is happening. And I wish that the same way you are involved in our discussions, you will get involved in the discussions around all the departmental committees of the National Assembly, because that is where all these reports and the expenditure, especially on the expenditure side, are initiated.
Okay, interesting, Chairman. Parliament is the oversight authority of the national executive. You're calling for oversight on the oversight body, but yeah, eternal vigilance. I will be transitioning to hear from the audience, including Sylvia, who will be speaking to us. If you have a spare mic, you can circulate it. But as we do that, Steve, maybe you can help us understand if you have any specific incentives that you think should be introduced to improve tax compliance among businesses, but also to spur growth of the sector at such a time that we're witnessing challenges in the economic sector.
There are a lot of incentives, but before I go to the incentives, I'd like to go to the heart of the matter. Last year, this country nearly burned because of the finance bill. It was a serious problem. But it was not about the finance bill of last year. There was pent-up frustrations, both from the private sector and the public, about how fiscal policy was being developed and how tax administration, to some extent, was being implemented. But the main problem was how do we formulate our fiscal policy. There had been many examples before then where essential goods, essential commodities had been brought into taxation. Raw materials used by the manufacturing sector for production, which aids their businesses, are being brought under excise duty and export promotion levy and other taxes. These are very extreme tax measures. Capital gains tax rate being increased from 5% to 15%, with the expectation that tax collection in that regard will increase threefold, but then it actually collapses. Actual tax yield collapses immediately. Additional taxes of fiscal policy so that the product that is coming out of that is good quality. Contribution of the private sector or KEPSA, CAM, different industry groups, Kenya Bankers Association or Federation of Kenya Employers, KOTU, the contribution of these critical players needs to also be in that particular institutionalization. And it needs to be open and not opaque. Chairman, the team, from what I hear in the rumors, the team that actually make the finance bill, who actually do the initial drawing, is called a black box, or black box team. Now, if you know what a black box is, it's a box that you can't really know what is inside that particular box until the plane crashes. And the plane crashed in last year's finance bill. Now, this comes from the legacy of secrecy of the finance bill from which you spoke about, how secretive it was. The same structure of secrecy has been carried forward. And this is a public document. It's not supposed to be in a black box. It should be open. People should know what is coming next year in terms of the tax changes. There should be participation of the critical people who are affected by those proposals. If there needs to be feasibility study, then it needs to be undertaken, and in good time, there should be no rush. That particular institution, to carry out this particular mandate, it should not work in deadlines close to the budget time. It should be a continuous entity that is working. It is so critical. There is no need of spending money on other things and not spending money on such a critical facility. So this is really the heart of the matter. Everything really collapses because there is no technical capacity in Treasury to actually, or it's not institutionalized, to actually have proper laws.
All right. Governor, to call you that. Help us, because we are told that there are so many experts at the National Treasury from all sectors that I can imagine of. How then will you still end up in such a situation that Steve describes, having sort of black box?
I guess we need to open the black box, isn't it, to figure out why the plane crashed. But look, I believe that a good thing can be made better. What Steve is advocating is building additional capacity at Treasury to do certain kind of analysis. And I agree with Steve. I mean, for instance, and not to preempt debate, but if you look at the annual report of tax expenditure, tax expenditure is the taxes we forego because we make certain rules, say tax credits or exemptions or zero rating and so on. And Treasury produces an annual report, quite detailed, about what is the tax forgone, which we then call tax expenditure. 511 billion in 2023. 511 billion is what we forgo. Is that English really? That's what we... So you can see, the finance bill measures from last year were expected to yield 250. But what we were leaving on the table was 510. Meaning, if those exemptions and what were not there, it would have more than twice covered what was expected from the finance bill. Of course, now you're going to ask, well, why does government do that? Of course, this, tax incentives are supposed to stimulate, like that. Say, because of these allowances we are making, then investments are going or moving in this direction. And if the investments are not moving in the desired direction, you must ask, is this incentive then working? So to me, when Steve is saying deepen technical capacity. You see, do that sort of analysis and do it really candidly, so that we are solving the real issues. I would even now go back to this question of formality versus informality. That do we not need to deepen our analysis? This sector we call informal sector. If we were to stop looking at it from just the simple point of business registration, could we understand it better? And what can we expect it to yield? Because there is no doubt many businesses in the so-called informal sector, the incomes, as I said already in this session, are commensurate, if not higher, to incomes of salaried people. Now, where is that analysis? So, I agree with Steve. The way I would like to conclude is that the whole thing can be made better. And in any case, the purpose of engaging in this way is to identify opportunities for improvement. And I see this particular item as one area of improvement. Are there many experts in Treasury? Do we have many experts in Treasury? But this particular thing needs improving. I absolutely agree.
Okay.
Understand.
We'll get to the Chairman Finance and Planning because he'll help us to understand who actually writes the finance bill. Cynthia, she's the head of finance, 254 Brewing Company. Yeah, somebody give her the mic. She has a question relating to small brewers industry. You can also hear from Rose Maura, and there's another hand at the back.
Thank you, Sam. My name is Cynthia Gigaga. I'm the head of finance 254 Brain. I'll classify ourselves as the small brewers industry. As 254 Brain, we've decided to engage with the government to ensure we promote job creation as well as ensure public health. That means making our beer affordable, which is also a factor of the excess duty that one of the amendments that were passed last year. So my question goes to Honorable Derito Moreithi in regards to, it's a follow-up questions on the systems. So the amendment kicked off on the 27th of December that the small brewers will pay shillings 10 per centiliter, which means it is a very key concern for the small brewers industry. However, as of right now, the systems are yet to be updated, and 20th is Monday. So the question is, how will we implement the amendment that was passed? Thank you.
All right, Rose, do you have an extra mic so that we can move it to the back also? Start here. Rose is here. There's another hand somewhere. Yes,
thank you so much, Chairman Kimani Kuria, and welcome to the conversation we've been having this morning. I have about 3 comments that I wanted to make. One is that on the appropriations bill, I would wish we had as robust a process where the bill is published and the committee invites the public to give in their comments in a similar way that your committee does for the budget. And so I think this is something that we do need to look into, because I very seriously agree that we must cut our cloth. Cut our coat according to our cloth? Because we're talking about a 3.9 trillion budget. And even if you tell us to look at what the counties are spending, 400 billion, that's just about 10-12% of the total. So that leaves us with another 3.5 trillion, which I believe, and even when we look at a comparison with our neighbors, look at Tanzania, higher population than we do. You look at Ethiopia, almost double our population. And you look at their budgets, they're actually, I believe, less than what our budgets are. So we really need to focus on that. And I think we have to task you on that from a parliamentary perspective. You we will not allow you to come and tell us that you're only focusing on the revenue aspect of it and not really focusing on the expenditure part of it. Because if you don't do it, who's going to do it? Isn't it? And it's really, really important. That's what's driving the high taxes. That's what's driving the high borrowings and all that. And therefore, that's also what's depriving private sector credit. So that's really an area we must challenge you. The next area I want to talk to you about is really public participation. And I wanted to give you the example of, we've engaged with you so many, even when I was at ISPAC, part of the bodies that were engaging with parliamentary committees, at KEPSA. I think public participation has failed. So we come to you and say that, and sometimes we do come with, many times we do come with data to say that this particular tax measure, if implemented in this manner, is going to have this detrimental impact in this particular sector. And this information is brought, but our concern is that sometimes the input of industry, of businesses, and other stakeholders are not always taken into account. And that's why you hear Steve talking about the plane almost crashing, was it? And all that. Because of that unwillingness to listen to public participation. The next...
Rose, just wanted to summarize because you have
yes.
a few more hands.
Right, so I think the last thing I want to talk about, what has just been mentioned, the consultation and the expert insight is so important. We'll speak about tax yields, and we have a way to monitor and evaluate what are these tax measures and what are the tax yields. You have a measure put in last year, this year it's not yielding, it's revised. And again, coming back to the whole process.
We have very little time. Allow me to just take the hand back there. We have very little time. Allow me to just and because it's spoken, let me give you a chance.
Into VAT exempt. And we know right now we have the government trying to subsidize fertilizers to bring down the cost for farmers, and there's a price mark of farmers need to get the product at 2,500. Now, what we are grappling right now in the sector is the fact that now with this new law, we have to, because of that exempt status, businesses are not able to offset the VAT of the inputs that come with fertilizer production and everything. And this will definitely need to mean that there will be an increase in the fertilizer product. And we also have a change in the railway development levy, where we have an increase from 1.5% to 2%. So that is another increase. So this may seem like very little increases because it's like maybe 200 to 300 shillings per bag. But then when you look incrementally, the government is supposed to be, say they will be subsidizing 7.5 million bags of fertilizer. So if you just do a quick calculation, 7.5 million bags times 200 comes to about 1.5 billion. So someone has to pay for this. It's either the farmer will pay for it in an increase of the fertilizer, or the government will pay for it in the subsidy, or the companies will have to go take that and absorb it, and it becomes a loss. And so there seems to be that contradictory, where we have on the one end, the government is trying to reduce, which is a very good thing, cost of production for farmers, but then at the same time there's this policy that is increasing the same inputs the government is trying to reduce cost.
Okay, well, that's clearly
just one more, please allow me. The other contradictory is, we know our soils are depleted and micronutrients are right now VAT, and these are some of the nutrients that are needed to improve on the soils. So we seem to have that inconsistencies and unpredictability, and it would be great just to see how we can work together to try and have some, yeah.
All right, so finally, the gentleman there, very good responses. Please hand the mic, and I think most of these questions are directed to KRH and the Finance and Planning Committee Chair. Tell us your name and...
Okay, thanks. My name is Robert Maina. I'm a tax practitioner currently working for EY, another name. So So thanks. Mine is appropriate to both Honorable Kimani Kuria and the Governor, who is currently the chair. And I'm happy to get different views from the Governor, former Governor, in terms of the tax to GDP ratio. We've had the government complaining that we actually are paying tax. And probably this is what is driving the many taxes that are coming in. But I think, like he has said, our growth has been driven by the public sector investments. So one of the things that I think I would, and you heard again from someone saying the incentives are being taken away. Like you said, tax incentives analysis, as opposed to just giving us, we've lost 500 billion. Probably if you tell us, this is the incentive that we gave you, but based on our analysis, we are not getting the benefits that should be, the society should be getting. That conversation will be different, because currently you're just giving us the numbers, but you're not telling us, did you actually get the benefit that you wanted to get from that? Because that's where I think we don't seem to align with the government in terms of the incentives. And we've had the current CS talking about repeating a lot of these incentives. And related to that is that contributions, and they are from income. Can you consider this as part of the taxes when you're computing your tax to GDP ratio? Because these are compulsory contributions and they are coming from incomes. I think it would only be fair that you consider them. That's an incremental. I think when I look at an employee, it's an incremental of about almost 5% on their income. And I think if you
very expensive, people will be sitting on the floor. But consequently, it led to spark for 9% of the business. So question is not necessarily a discussion to have. Then on our budget, I think there are two conversations we're going to have. What is a cost? I think there are two conversations we're going to have. What is a cost? Development agency. But is that a conversation? How much are we willing to yield in terms of saying, do we consider are in the...
And then how you calculate the tax to GDP ratio, including SHIFT and AHL.
So maybe I start there with that tax to GDP, building on what the chair of the committee is saying. Now, Robert was asking, isn't that the point, Robert? If you look at the report, it tells you a number. For instance, it will say the tax, the income tax expenditure for plant and machinery allowance was 51 billion in 2023, up from 13.8 billion 4 years before it. So isn't that the question we're asking? And the chair is trying to explain that there is evidence, he quotes furniture and so on, and clinker, that in fact, some of those incentives you can show directly what the impact is. And that's the kind of analysis I think that Steve was asking you to begin with. That let's not assume that these were, so for instance, as I say, investment allowance, so in total, if you look at corporate income tax expenditure, we've moved from 22 billion in 2020 to about 88 billion in 2023. Can we see the commensurate economic activity? In that then informs the next series of decisions. Who should do the analysis? The folks at Treasury ought to do the analysis, but I would imagine even you as stakeholders ought to do that kind of analysis, but certainly we on the Treasury side should be able to put out that analysis. On the fertilizer question and these changes or contradictions that, I think we accept that those are the improvements needed. That as we make proposals moving forward, we must try and make sure that they don't result in a contradiction in policy the way Glenn is explaining. Because you can see, and if I understand her point, moving treating the inputs the way we have treated them in the last period made it impossible for them to claim input VAT, which means they have to pass it on to the farmer. Yet we also, the government are saying, we're trying to help the farmer. We cannot suddenly be helping the farmer by increasing. So again, I would agree with you. 254 brewing. I don't have an answer for you. I hear your point. I think you give me your contacts. Later in the day, I'll give you a real answer. And I'm going to go, well, I'm headed there at 11, and I'm going to give you a real answer. Obviously, if we haven't sorted out the system, how can we expect you to be able to do it? Well, give me your contact and I'll give you a real answer, perhaps towards lunchtime. On the questions that Rose raised, mainly they were for chair, but I think I just want to emphasize that point about the robustness of the system, not of the system, the robustness of how we interrogate the appropriation or the expenditure side of what we're doing. The chair has, I think, yes, the chair and his colleagues must do it, but I also think all of us have to be willing to be part and part of that conversation. I have, my colleague Kama and I have just concluded a month ago a political economy analysis on public debt, trying to figure out what are the drivers of public expenditure and therefore public debt. So what you will find, there are not enough of us as citizens and therefore as our representatives who are saying slow down expenditure. Mainly all of us are saying spend more, spend more, spend more. But to spend more, we have either to tax or to borrow. It is simply like that. How do we move the conversation to that? My favorite, there are nice staff, I'm sure, who work there. My favorite example has always been the Kenya South Sudan Liaison Office, created for a purpose in a particular time in history when South Sudan was not an independent nation. Now that it is, with full diplomatic and member of EAC, why do we have a side organization dealing with our relations with this country? It's a legacy. Who is willing to stand up and say, legacy things that have outlived their usefulness, we must stop? Now, the difficulty with the rules is that there is no political constituency for it. There is no real, we have to build that political constituency for a check on the expenditure side. Thank you, Mudari.
All right. Thank you so much. And allow me to repeat that, Steve and James, please understand that we have to close it at this point. Thank you so much, Chairman Kuria Kimani, Finance and Planning Committee, Kenya Revenue Authority, Chair Governor Derek Murebi, Steve Okoth from KEPSA, and our CEO, Public Institute, Public Finance Institute of Public Finance. And thank you so much all, also for the audience and your participation. I want to invite Ruth Kendagor, the Head of Research and Research Capacity Strengthening from IPF, to close for us. He's asking for a photo session after the event? Okay, all right. But Governor has to leave. Good.
Our distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I believe I'm tall enough and audible enough. Good morning. Good morning once again. May I take just a minute to thank each and every one of us for taking time off your busy schedules, your activities, despite the short notice. We really appreciate to join us in this forum, to share insights and to listen and to reflect and to think about what the year 2025 holds for all of us as Kenyans and as citizens. We thank you, our guests, for making time to speak to us, to share your insights, and to hear what the audience has. And I like the commitment to even follow up on questions that were asked where responses are not available at the moment. We appreciate that. We give our commitment as the Institute of Public Finance to continue advancing opportunities for public discourse in public finance management. Over the year, we will continue interacting with each and every one of you to invite you to forums like this, or through webinars, or to access our reports and interact with them, so that we are all able to get credible information and to put forward different suggestions, policy recommendations, insights to improve the space. In the coming week, we will be launching one of our flagship reports, the Macro-Fiscal Analytic Snapshot, and we will communicate and invite you to join us and listen through the findings. Thank you once again, and have a lovely rest of the day. God bless.
Thank you so much for coming. My name is Sam Gituku. We'll see you again some other time. But for now, I think the panelists will have a photo session.
Can you have a discussion over here? Just open the